The stagecoach rattled through the dying light of Wyoming territory, its wheels whispering over red dust that caught the sunset like embers of an old fire. Inside sat Eleanor Whitfield, 30 years old and already a widow, wrapped in black silk and Charleston manners. Her gloved hands stayed perfectly still on her lap, though her knuckles had gone pale beneath the lace. The driver turned in his seat as they climbed the ridge road. "Boone's land ain't for fine ladies, ma'am," he warned, eyes flicking toward the black pines ahead. "It's wild country up there. Wolves, wind, and worse." She didn't look up from the window. "I've survived finer men than wolves," she said, but her voice trembled just enough for the driver to hear it. When the coach finally stopped, the mountain air hit her, sharp and pine-sweet. A small cabin crouched ahead in a clearing, smoke curling thin from the chimney like a prayer that had forgotten its words. A man stepped from the doorway, Silas Boone, broad-shouldered, coat patched, eyes like river stones worn smooth by silence. Eleanor took one long, assessing look. "This," she said, "is the great Boone property my late husband invested in?" He studied her without moving. "Land don't care who owns it. Only who listens." She gave a small, cutting laugh. "Do you talk to dirt, Mr. Boone?" His gaze didn't waver. "More honest than most folks I've met." The silence stretched, thick with unspoken judgment. Behind her, the coach wheels cracked over frozen mud, eager to leave. Eleanor lifted her skirt from the dirt, the hem of it already smudged brown. "You can tell your soil," she said coolly, "that Mrs. Whitfield has heard enough." But as she turned away, she caught the faintest motion. Boone kneeling to check a loose shutter, his hands steady, his movements quiet and sure. Like the land itself trusted him. It was a kind of dignity she didn't understand, and that unsettled her more than any insult could have. By the time she reached Whitestone, the sun had folded behind the hills, leaving a cold blue in its place. The saloon lamps flickered awake one by one, golden eyes in the dark. She passed through their glow to the inn across the street, the smell of tobacco and laughter thick in the air. Inside, voices carried. "Did you hear?" came Mrs. Greeley's syrupy tone. "That Charleston widow went up Boone's Ridge today. Thought she'd buy him out or charm him out? Charm Boone?" A man laughed. "That fella talks less than a tombstone." Eleanor froze at the counter. The clerk avoided her gaze as he set down her room key. The gossip rolled on like a tide behind her, soft, cruel, relentless. Outside, she paused beneath the swinging inn sign, her breath clouding in the cold. The stars above were cruelly bright, scattered like diamonds too far away to ever touch. She remembered Boone's cabin, the hush of the woods, his quiet eyes that didn't mock her. Somehow that stillness felt more honest than the rooms filled with pity back east. When Marshal Pike stopped her on the boardwalk, his badge caught the lamplight. "Ma'am, heard you're heading up Boone's way again tomorrow. Storm brewing in from the north. Best wait it out." Eleanor adjusted her shawl. "I've weathered worse." "Not this kind," the marshal said. "Not out there, but pride has its own kind of deafness." Morning came cold and white. She rode alone, her horse's hooves breaking the frost-hardened trail. The sky hung low, heavy with unspoken warning. She told herself she needed to see the property again to decide its fate, but truthfully, something else pulled her. The way Boone had looked at her without admiration or judgment, as if she were simply another traveler passing through his silence. Snow began to fall, soft at first, then thick, blinding. The ridge vanished into a swirl of white. Her horse stumbled on a rock, panicked, and in one wild motion she was thrown. The world turned upside down, cold biting through silk, breath tearing from her chest. The horse bolted into the blur. She called after it, her voice breaking apart in the wind. "Help! Hello?" But the wilderness does not echo vanity. Her words fell flat against the storm. Hours, or minutes, she couldn't tell, passed. Her dress, once elegant, clung heavy and wet. She pressed on through the trees until her knees gave out. Snow stung her cheeks like tiny needles. She tried to remember warmth, laughter, perfume, the sound of a piano at dusk, but all of it felt impossibly far away, like another woman's life. When she finally saw the faint orange glow through the storm, She thought it a trick of the eyes. But as she stumbled closer, the outline of a cabin took shape. Smoke, wood, and the soft pulse of light. Her strength gave out at the doorstep. The door opened before she could knock. Silas Boone caught her as she fell. She was too cold to protest, too weak to summon pride. His voice came low and calm, steady as the mountain. "Easy now. Storm's got teeth tonight." She wanted to say something cruel, to reclaim her high ground, but her lips were blue, her body shaking uncontrollably. He lifted her, strong, careful arms, and set her near the fire. The scent of pine smoke filled her lungs. Somewhere in the haze between waking and sleep, she felt his hand brush snow from her hair, tucking a blanket around her shoulders. Her last thought before darkness took her was not of Charleston's chandeliers, nor of gossip, nor grief. It was the warmth of that cabin, the sound of the wind kept safely outside, and the strange comfort of a man who asked for nothing in return. When Eleanor opened her eyes, the world had gone quiet except for the soft hiss of snow melting on the roof. The fire burned low, its glow breathing over the walls in amber waves. She was wrapped in a thick buffalo coat that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Her silk dress, torn and stiff, hung by the hearth, steaming gently. Boone sat a few feet away, carving something by the firelight, a handle perhaps, or a piece of antler. His movements were slow, patient, as if time itself took direction from him. Her voice came out hoarse, uncertain. "I mocked your home." He didn't look up. "Ain't the first time someone's mistaken plain for poor." She stared at the fire. The words should have stung, but they didn't. There was no anger in them, just quiet knowing. "I shouldn't have come alone," she murmured. "Storm don't care what we should have done," he said. "Only what we do now." The cabin creaked softly as wind pressed against its walls. Boone poured her a cup of coffee and held it out. She hesitated before taking it, the roughness of his fingers brushing hers. The warmth of the cup bled into her palms, into her bones. Outside, the wind howled like something wounded. Inside, time slowed. She could hear the small pops of resin in the wood, the rhythm of his breath. They talked a little as the night deepened. Not like strangers, but like two people too tired to pretend anymore. He spoke of the war, of brothers buried on battlefields the world had already forgotten, of coming west to find something that wasn't broken. She told him of her husband's empty mansion, of laughter that never reached the heart, of the loneliness that trailed her wealth like a shadow. When their eyes met again, something wordless passed between them, a recognition, as if both had been waiting for this silence all their lives. Boone leaned back, gaze on the fire. "Out here," he said softly, "you don't earn respect with coin. You earn it with kindness." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Then I've been poor my whole life." He didn't answer, just reached for another log, feeding the fire as though it were something sacred. A sound cut through the quiet, a distant howl, sharp and rising. Boone stiffened. "Wolves," he said. "Smell the horses." He rose, grabbed his rifle, and moved to the door. Eleanor pushed herself upright. "What are you going to do?" "Scare 'em off. I'll come. You'll stay." But when he opened the door, the storm wind rushed in, wild and cold, and she followed anyway. The snow was knee-deep, the moon a dull blur behind the clouds. She clutched the lantern, its flame flickering in the wind. Boone moved ahead, calm and steady, his breath ghosting in the dark. A pair of eyes flashed in the distance, then another, gleaming, shifting. The wolves circled, their shapes slipping through the trees like moving shadows. Boone fired once, the shot echoing off the ridge. The pack scattered, then regrouped. One lunged too close. Eleanor, without thinking, swung the lantern hard. Fire burst from its glass belly, scattering flame and light. The wolves yelped, retreating into the black. Boone caught her by the arm, pulling her against him as the last embers died in the snow. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Her breath came fast against his chest. His hand was still on her waist. "You shouldn't have come out," he said finally. "You saved me," she whispered. "Let me try the same." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time she saw the softness in the rough lines of his face. A man who'd spent his years keeping distance, suddenly unsure why. The storm eased to a whisper. He brushed a strand of wet hair from her forehead, his fingers lingering just long enough to be felt. Neither of them moved away. Morning came pale and trembling. The snow had stopped, leaving the world wrapped in white silence. Steam rose from the roof in gentle ribbons. Eleanor stepped outside, Boone's coat heavy around her shoulders. The sky had turned clear, bright as glass. Every branch glittered. Every breath felt new. She looked down at the valley, the same land she had once mocked, and felt a strange ache bloom in her chest. "I used to think beauty came from chandeliers and velvet," she said softly. "Now I think it comes from scars and snowlight." Boone stood beside her, eyes on the horizon. "Scars mean you healed," he said. "Snow just reminds you you're still alive." She turned to him then, the silence stretching easy between them. For once she didn't need to fill it. Her gloved hand slipped free from the coat, reaching toward him. He hesitated, then took it, his calloused fingers closing around hers. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something quieter, older, a recognition of shared solitude, of having both lived through too much and found grace waiting anyway. By the time spring returned, the ridge had changed. Town gossip drifted softer, uncertain. Mrs. Greeley, on her porch, whispered to her friends, "That rich widow, she's still up there with Boone. Some say she calls that cabin hers now. And if you rode past the ridge on a calm evening, you might see smoke rising steady from the chimney, two shadows moving behind the window, a faint hum of laughter carried by the wind. The mountains kept their silence. But if they could speak, they'd tell you this. Sometimes the ones we mock are the ones who save us. Sometimes the poorest home is the only place a heart finally rests, and pride, that brittle thing we wear like armor, is nothing but a door that waits, quietly, for love to knock."